Good afternoon, everybody. If you weren't aware of it, I'm Bob Safian. I'm the editor. And this is Princess Reema, a member of the royal Saudi Arabian royal family, businesswoman, entrepreneur, health advocate, among many other things. And as a result, as you heard, was ranked #1 on Fast Company's list of the most creative people in business in 2014. You are in for a treat, I promise you. You're going to see a window into a world that you're not going to see anywhere else here at South by Southwest. The princess will later take some questions. So for those of you who want to submit questions by Twitter, you can please use the hashtag Ask10KSA, ASK10KSA, like ask backwards. Another request, this conversation is public, and I'm going to put this question to you folks over here, although I know you already know this. For reasons of security and privacy, we ask that you not take pictures of Reema's face and send them along on social. We'd prefer that. That would be appreciated. You ready to begin?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we're going to discuss a bunch of stuff this afternoon.
Yes.
Right? We're going to talk about your efforts to bring women into the workforce in Saudi. We're going to talk about your efforts to build an academy that helps to prepare women and girls for being able to be in the workforce in Saudi. We're going to talk about your fashion work, your fashion business, and how that intersects with this mission. All right? And finally, we're going to talk about your advocacy for women's health in Saudi. And a new program regarding breast cancer awareness that you're going to be announcing live on the stage in a little bit.
Yes,
okay?
Indeed.
To begin,
yes.
I think it would be good to spend a few minutes acclimating all of us here about how life is different in Saudi than it is in Austin.
Sure.
Culturally and otherwise, but particularly culturally. And I wanted to ask by starting something very simple and personal. Your headscarf.
Yes.
Yesterday when we had lunch, you weren't wearing the headscarf.
Correct.
Today on the stage you are wearing it. When you're in Saudi, you wear it in public, but not in private.
Correct.
Can you explain what all of that is culturally about?
Yes.
Why?
So if you could imagine the headscarf and the abaya as the equivalent of formal attire. So if you go out in public, you would don on your jacket and you'd go out. So if you could try to place the abaya and differentiate it from the burqa, that's its function. So it's formal attire. When I'm in my private life, I don't wear it, and when I'm in public, I do. And today, particularly because we're launching a campaign that I would like to be a national campaign in honor and respect of my community and my culture, I'm covering my hair.
Okay. In Saudi, in public, women are always covered? Often covered?
So we really are living in changing times, and it just depends on your family background, the city you're from, and the environment that you're from. I can tell you from the ladies that work in our store, I know you're seeing, this is our ladies, they're our staff, have their faces covered. Some of them cover their faces, some of them don't. I don't cover my face, even when I'm back home. I never have, and it's not something that my family has ever done. But it is definitely, it does happen, and I don't see, as long as it's somebody's choice to dress the way they're dressing, I think my job is to respect that and allow them the opportunity to come to work. And we had discussed this yesterday, and the ladies, you're going to see a couple of pictures that come through in our store, are ladies that are first-generation employees. They've left their home and are facing great obstacles to actually come to the workplace. And so once they enter into the workplace, what's important for me is that I allow them the opportunity to earn an income, regardless of their appearance. And I just think it would be really fascinating if, I know this image might disturb some people, but if you could channel into what you're feeling right now when you look at that picture and realize those 4 women at the Bobby Brown counter bring a turnover of over 3 million riyals to my business, which was Harvey Nichols. And the value of what they're doing is so phenomenal that if you could get over their appearance and finally maybe try to judge a woman based on her capability rather than her appearance, I think we really all as a community, a global community, would go much farther. And I have infinite amounts of respect for these women because they actually get up every morning and come to work, and it's very challenging.
So in Saudi, for women to come to work dressed, covered, or are there laws that are making that way? Is it cultural?
It's cultural.
And I mean, I know you've had some issues with religious police, which maybe we'll get to in a little bit, but you talk about how women only are seen by their family members in terms of men?
Right. So if you can, again, to put this into context, a lot of the ladies, and again, it really depends. My country, like any country, has people on various socioeconomic levels. But in certain communities, the interaction that these women have with men is their family. So it's their brothers and their fathers, and if by extension, maybe cousins, aunts, and uncles. So if you could try to put yourself in that mindset, and then with what's happened with our laws, 2 years ago, almost 3 years, laws passed, particularly for retail, allowing women to work. And I know that sounds quite peculiar, but if you could imagine walking into a department store, which is the situation I walked into 6 years ago when I took over at Harvey Nichols, my whole staff was male, and it was trying to figure out what is missing here, what's going on, and I realized.
And so at that point, the laws were not permitting women to work in the stores?
The laws specifically did not allow women to work. And the king, our late King Abdullah, passed the law 3 years ago, formalizing and instituting the fact that women must be able to go to work, and then specifically specifying where they must work, because it was almost like he had to push the community to allow these women in, which, if you consider for the past 20 years, men have been traditionally in these roles, you could see why they might be scared to relinquish the role that they're in to allow a woman to come in to the workplace. But
so you became so your family owns a company called Alfa International.
Correct.
That in turn operates the store Harvey Nichols, that is a lucrative or luxury department store in Riyadh.
Akin to a Barney's here.
And when you were in charge, you were the CEO, and you're now on the executive board. Mm-hmm. So I know you're still in part of the leadership team there. You made the decision you wanted to bring women in into that.
So what we did is we looked at the laws and we said specifically, I asked the team, specifically tell me where women can work and cannot work. So what the law said was in retail. It didn't quite mention makeup artists, it didn't quite mention back office, dressing room attendants. So we kind of made a hit list of where we thought we could get away with employing women. So we were the first department store.
So the law said that they could work in retail, but it didn't say specifically where.
Could not work in sales.
Could not work in sales.
Or at the cashiers specifically.
Okay.
So what we decided to do is looked at the, I guess, low-hanging fruit. And in our cosmetics department, we contacted all of the cosmetics brands and asked them if they would be willing to create a private room for women that we could then, through the various brands, hire makeup artists that would represent that brand. But what was important for me is I didn't want this to be a hole in the wall or just a corner in the back of the store. It had to carry the same brand concept. So Bobbi Brown's private room looks like Bobbi Brown, Guerlain's room looks like Guerlain, Chanel looks like Chanel, Burberry looks like Burberry. Because what I wanted to do is deliver a high customer experience, but also allow an opportunity for a woman to come to work. And what that means is when you look at my community, it's conservative, they're private, they don't really want to engage with a man or have him touch their face. So when we noticed that when we created the private rooms and we hired the women, our sales shot through the roof. I mean, we were the #1 earner, and I think we still are today, from a beauty department in the whole kingdom. And Bobbi Brown, that counter with those 4 ladies, were FedExing us product just to keep up with the sales.
So if I understand, going into your store, I would walk in and it would sort of, there'd be counters there, mm-hmm. and then if I wanted to try on the makeup, mm-hmm. I would go to another room in the back that would look the same.
You'd have the option to.
Okay.
So if you closed your eyes and imagined Bloomingdale's cosmetics area, that's what my store looks like. It looks no different than any other department store anywhere in the world, except for our ladies. Some of them dress like this and cover their faces, and some of them don't. The customers have the choice then to either engage publicly in front of everybody, or if they would like to choose the private room, they then have the extra service of a makeup artist who will work with them.
Now, initially, all those counters used to be manned by men,
100%.
Right? Which was kind of an awkward situation for sales, right? Now, when you started having women come to work at the store, mm-hmm. there were complications even with transportation. Women are not driving?
So women in Saudi Arabia don't drive. It's a fact.
Is it a law again, or
is it not a law? It's not written down anywhere that they cannot drive. It's just women do not drive, and the public perception of women driving is not a positive perception en masse. But as an employer, when I'm looking at concepts of productivity and efficiency, I need these women. If the law has come down and I'm told I must hire them, and I fully 100% believe I must hire women, and then I'm actually kind of stuck because I can't actually measure their productivity or efficiency if they can't actually come to work on time. And if you can imagine, there's nothing more frustrating, and it happens to myself. It's 9:30 and I've got a 10 a.m. meeting and my driver's not there, and I'm the CEO of the company and I need to go, and I'm meeting with other CEOs and I'm trying to run a business, but I can't get myself to work. It's extremely profoundly frustrating. So I am in a situation where I can afford a driver. I can come, I can go, and it's not going to dent my budget to hire a driver. But when I look at my employees, it's extremely difficult for them to balance the fact that not only are they leaving their home and coming, a lot of the girls from the sales points of view are coming on an entry-level salary, but then they have to justify to husband, to mother-in-law, and anyone from Asia or the Middle East. Pakistan is going to know the conflict of the mother-in-law and your children. She wants you at home. So you're now trying to convince everybody why you need to leave this child and go to work, and at an entry-level salary, and then you have to pay the driver. It's a difficult proposition. So what we did when we researched the obstacles for women coming to work, and we realized obviously transportation, so we offer them a stipend. Daycare was an issue, so we're the first and only department store in the kingdom to have daycare for our staff. We had an issue of public perception, so we participated in a lot of marketing initiatives to create a more positive image for women in retail, and then training. And the training was one of the things that actually shocked me, because I have never in my life felt more arrogant than when we were developing the training program for these women, because when I first sat down and looked at it, and I was horrified with myself at the end, I was purely thinking on how do we benefit the store and our bottom line by training these women. And we were talking about customer centricity and customer service and sales and all of these things, and then I realized I'm speaking in a dialogue and a language that these ladies have never been spoken to, and I'm asking them to do things that they just don't even know, and we were getting frustrated that we've spent all this money training them.
And they don't know this. Why? Because they've been so sheltered in their...
They have never been put in a situation where they have been asked to function within a professional organization. So when you're coming to them and talking about customer service, they've never experienced that quality of customer service. And we ended up looking at this and realizing that what these women actually needed to benefit, and my role as the CEO of a company and then training these women, was actually preparing these women for life and teaching them things, for example, like how do you open your bank account, because we had ladies coming in applying for a job and they wanted the money transferred to their husband's account, which you can't do that. They'd come in and they didn't have IDs, so then they didn't have social insurance or a bank account, so we'd have to send them back out to go get their ID, to come back in, and I realized they need help in financial planning, time management, confidence skills. And if you could imagine that these women were coming into a department store where they knew for a fact that they were replacing a man who had had this job for 10 years and knew what he was doing, and she was coming in with maybe 3 weeks experience, no training, and being thrown to the wolves, and then at every weekly huddle being told that profits are dropping, and she knows when her supervisor's saying profits are dropping, he's looking right at her saying it's her fault. So what we decided to do, and it was imperative for me, was to create an environment where these women felt comfortable and confident coming to work. So we had to work on them first, and once they were stable and comfortable in the situation of the work environment, we could then focus on the benefit to the store. And when you actually really look at it, having a confident employee that feels safe and stable and respected, that in and of itself is a boon for your business.
And so the government is supportive of the idea of women working?
1,000%.
But there's resistance from other areas.
Correct.
From your employees, from the families of the women who you're hiring often?
Yeah.
And other cultural influences also that are resisting?
Well, because if you could imagine a community that was so used to women not participating, suddenly women are forced on them, and really forced on them because it was a deadline and a mandate that was given saying, you have 8 months. Within 8 months, these are the sectors where women must be employed, and these are the sectors where men will no longer be employed. By law, not allowed. So you had businesses scrambling, and you can imagine, as positive as it is to create these opportunities for women, if you think long term, these women have to work with men. So it's not like they're existing on their own ecosystem. So our approach at our store was to try to have a measured approach where we made sure that everybody felt safe and stable and secure in their jobs. And we really had to look at the evaluations of the men in the store and ask the ones that weren't performing to leave and bring women in their place, and really juggle around and make sure that everybody feels respected, because I also don't agree with the fact that you should eliminate all men for the benefit of women. That's not a healthy community. from my point of view.
So, so you have this, this need or this movement to have more women in the workforce, and you're now started through a social enterprise that you started this year, Alf Khair, which I'm probably mispronouncing, to start an academy to train these women, right? And so how does that academy work? This is separate from the store.
It's absolutely separate. So I stepped down from my role as CEO, and as you mentioned, I'm on the executive committee. And when I was at the store, I had signed up for this program called Think in Amsterdam, and it's the School for Creative Leadership. And my accelerator project was going to be creating this retail academy based on my experience at the store. But when I got there and I met my classmates, and I was exposed to this whole world of people that are innovative social entrepreneurs that have experiences in life that I've never even imagined possible, I realized, and I'm now working with my classmates to make this project a reality, I actually am not creating a retail academy because that would provide such a small impact, and there are many other people in the market doing that. What we realized is, in order to benefit these women entering into the workplace, I'd like to focus on the skills that nobody else is focusing on and taking a step backwards. So we are going to be focusing on readiness to work skills and giving these individuals and these women basically a toolkit for how do you function to be a capable individual in your community. And should you choose to work, we will offer you the verticals of retail, NGO, corporate, and really the frontline employees. We're not talking senior level here. But if you choose to not work after taking these courses, you're actually an extremely capable individual. And there's a lot of talk in the West about, you know, the value of the mother that stays at home versus the woman that goes to work. And we discussed this before. For me, the mother at home is your COO. She is head of operations. And once she has kids, she's procurement. She is, you know, once she's got staff, that's HR. So, I mean, I don't see a difference.
And so all of these life skills are what your academy will bring to the women and girls that you're trying to bring through this program. Right?
And we're sourcing the ladies that will come to our academy in 2 avenues. First of all, through other companies that would like to take our program and have us train their ladies, or through the Ministry of Labor and the Human Resources Development Fund. We'll be working with ladies that then don't have jobs. And what we would do is work with almost like preferred vendors and do on-the-job training where they've got 2 days in our academy and 3 days on the job as interns, and then they venture through in their careers.
So, you know, in the conversations that I've had with you and in having this conversation today, it can sound sometimes like being an entrepreneur in Saudi is like an oxymoron, like it can't really happen. And I want to talk about a particular thing that you did that sort of shows how entrepreneurship can work in Saudi. And it's about a fashion show that you did at some place called The Edge of the World.
Yes.
You have to explain what the Edge of the World is and where this came from.
So if you could imagine, the edge of the world would be like the Grand Canyon. And it's a place that's about 40 minutes outside of where I live.
In the desert.
In the desert. It overlooks the desert. So if you know anything about the geography of my country, it's a plateau. And so we're built on rock, and then there's a heavy drop, and that's kind of what you're seeing there. And I was approached by Aslaug Magnusdottir. She has a phenomenal website called Tinker Tailor. And Tinker Tailor wanted to come to Saudi, and just in full disclosure, not only am I an investor, but I'm also on the board of advisors. And she wanted to come to Saudi and introduce the concept of Tinker Tailor to the Middle East. And so we invited her, and the brand that she brought with her was Marchesa, and Karen Craig came out with her. And I've been to many events where you go to somebody's home and they bring a trunk show, or you go to a store and it is profoundly boring. So what we thought was, how do we do this with a little bit of sense of humor, a little bit of fun? And I actually go to the edge of the world, and everyone that visits me in Saudi, I almost drag them out there because it is one of the most beautiful locations you could imagine, particularly at sunset. So I pitched to Aslaug and said, would you mind if we did something outdoors and a little bit more fun and a bit of a fashion adventure?
And so you went to an event company and you hired them to sort of set all this up?
Well, I tried to hire an event company. So we went out there and we showed them the venue, and they looked at us like we were out of our minds because there is nothing out there. Literally, to describe how to get to this location, you'd have to say, drive out of the city center, go past the city limits, and then there's a gate, there's a fence, and then when there's the opening in the fence beside the 3rd sign where the king's face is, take a right, go up past the Bedouins, 3rd cliff, that's where we're going, you know? And they were like, No. So we went to the market, bought the rugs, and I figured, you know what, let's do this ourselves. And I worked with the staff that work with me, and we bought the rugs, we got the fairy lights, and we set it all up, and a friend of mine gave us the mannequins. And
so, and how did you got word of this out to the people you were inviting?
We decided to go a little bit alternative, and the two ways that we contacted people was, number one, through WhatsApp and text messaging. And what we asked everybody who was invited was, are you willing to come on a fashion fantasy adventure to a location that we will not tell you where it is, and you have two options how to get there. We will either send you a map of point A that you need to come to if your driver's bringing you, or please contact Uber at this number. And we didn't actually think anybody would come out.
So Uber had just launched.
Uber had just launched, and when we called them, and they were like, okay, where is this place? So we drove them out there a couple of times. They got their drivers on it, and I was sitting there thinking, this is either going to be outstanding or a miserable failure. And we drove out there at 3 o'clock, and we were waiting, and the guests were meant to arrive at 4, and it was one of the most anxious moments of my life, waiting for the black cars to come driving up, and slowly but surely they did, and we ended up with 120 women who came out there. But what we also did, because we couldn't find any food vendors that wanted to come out, is we contacted about 4 food entrepreneurs, Riyadh Cafe, La Vida Cafe, Rabbat Manzil, and the Barbecue Joint. And
all women-owned.
All women-owned entrepreneurial food concepts, and they came out there, and we basically had to explain to them, we've got no electricity, so Riyadh Cafe came out with a generator. The Barbecue Joint was lucky enough to have coals because they are barbecue. And the other 2 ladies made salads and desserts, and they brought them out with coolers. We managed to find an ice cream truck that was driving by on our way, so we roped them into this also. There was a lot of fun. And the image of the ladies that you saw on the second picture after the mannequins, by the way, were our guests. That's what ladies wear in Saudi. They kind of hang out. The dress on the right is Marquesa. The lady in the middle is Huneida Sayrafi, a fashion designer. The one on the left was one of our guests. And we set up fire pits. We also invited the fashion schools.
So you brought some students.
We did. We had about 25 students who came out, who had the opportunity to talk to Ashlog from a business point of view about fashion, and with Karen Craig about the actual fashion industry and design. So.
And you timed this, it coincided with?
Funny enough, Women's Entrepreneur Day.
So all of these pieces sort of come together, right? It's great.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to change subjects a little bit. A few years ago, you helped found a breast cancer awareness organization in Saudi called Zara Breast Cancer Association. Why did you do that? Okay, so
in full disclosure, my mother was the founding member of this with Dr. Saad, who together this was their idea. Dr. Saad is an oncologist in Saudi and started the first bank of breast tissue in the Middle East, and she's an outstanding human being. And the organization was a loose group of medical professionals that for 4 years had been preaching the gospel of breast cancer awareness. And then when Dr. Saad and my mother got together, they decided they wanted to canonize this and make this a proper organization. And when my mother asked me if I would join them, I won't lie, I said no, I'm busy, I'm working, I've got 2 kids, I'll donate money, tell me where to send my check to. And 2 days after, one of my dearest friends was diagnosed with breast cancer and called and let me know, and I decided that was a big sign that this might be something I need to participate in. And from that moment on, I've been all hands on deck.
Now, the incidence of women, the rate at which women are diagnosed with breast cancer in Saudi, it tends to happen at detection at much later stages, right? Why is that?
Okay, so if you really want to consider our community, it is a very closed and private community, and talking about specific body parts are taboo, and that goes not only for breast cancer, ovarian cancer, prostate cancer. It's very difficult conversations to have and difficult words to say in public. So not only is it a difficult conversation to have, the method that we need to educate the women on for early detection is an uncomfortable conversation to have.
In other words, to check yourself.
To check yourself.
Right.
So we have two different dialogues that we have within our community. In the larger cities, the women are very much aware, and Riyadh, Jeddah, Khabar really are no different than any major city that you'd see in any other country from a level of awareness of breast cancer. Take one step out to the rural cities, and you get into the issue of multiple wives, repeated marriages, and a woman does not want to admit her unhealthy status so that she's not replaced. So we are facing a lot of cultural issues when we go in there and talk about breast cancer. And what happens is we arrive and we're talking to these ladies about early detection, check yourself. If you catch it at stage 1, stage 2, minimal intervention, you're gonna be fine, life is great. The reality that they see is they catch it at stage 3 and 4, so all they see are women in pain, losing their hair, having a very, very difficult journey. So what they see versus what we're saying are two different realities. So for us, and why our work is so important is how do we take this conversation of breast cancer, kick it up to be a mainstream conversation so we can get women checking themselves and catching this and entering into the medical cycle much, much earlier, where it really should be as insignificant as a cavity in your mouth. And we need to absolutely get ourselves to that point. And when we were sitting in our boardroom and discussing how do you talk to so many people at one time, of course, because I think a little bit out of the box in a little bit of a weird corner, it was Guinness. I was like, Guinness, maybe we break a record. What do we do with these records? And then we started going through the book and we're like, we're gonna gather the largest amount of women in the world and we're gonna break this record. And then you sit and think, wait a minute, I'm in Saudi. How the heck am I gonna do this? You
so
know?
This was 2010,
2010.
Right?
We gathered 3,952 women, and the way we got the word out then was BBM Messenger, text messaging, and Facebook. Because that was pre-WhatsApp, I think Twitter was just still not big in the Middle East. And we managed to get these women all to the stadium, and we had, that's us. And it was a really big achievement for us.
I love these pictures, and I love, do we have the close-up pictures of the women too?
Mm-hmm.
I just, you know, it's fabulous. I have to say that, you know, you and I have talked before, and I'm always, struck by how you're using, there are a lot of people who have advantages and have privilege, and the extent to which you're using it to do a whole range of things is kind of amazing. Today, you're announcing a new initiative tied to breast cancer to try to outdo the reach of the last one. Do you want to explain what that is? So
the last ribbon that we did, we realized we broke a record and forgot the biggest component, which was awareness. And for the past 5 years, that detail and a few other logistical issues have just been kind of stirring in my gut. And this time we want to break the record of 10,000 women in Saudi Arabia gathering to break the largest human awareness ribbon. And and you might have seen the pink wings outside, and they're here basically because we'd like you all to participate with us, not only online by joining us and supporting these 10,000 women, but also by joining us by taking these wings and making this a really public cry for hope, and let those wings fly back to my country to support the women that are back there. And one of the things that's...
I think we have a video, actually.
We do? Okay, we'll show you the video.
So let's show this, this video of 10KSA.
Okay.
تحدثي فلنتحدث عن أنفسنا وعن كل من سبقنا.
أمل من قلوبنا تتصاعد آمالنا إلى السماء.
الفرحة يا شيخة، خلينا نتحد ونتشارك في قضيتنا.
انصتوا إلى كل نداء يعلو.
انضمي إلينا وضمي صوتك إلى أصواتنا.
تشافي معنا في وشاح وحدتنا هذا.
انهضي كامرأة، انهض كرجل، انهضوا معنا هنا، انهضوا معنا الآن.
نحن أمهاتكم،
نحن زوجاتكم،
نحن آباءكم، نحن أزواجكم وأشقاءكم
وبناتكم وشقيقاتكم وأهلكم.
فلنقوى باتحادنا.
لنقوى باتحادنا.
10,000 قويات.
10,000 وأصواتهن قد سمعت.
10,000 واعيات. 10,000 ضد السرطان.
من أجلها، من أجلك، من أجلنا كلنا.
So the website for 10KSA went live today.
Yes.
So you're hoping that people here will sign up and join and add their voices to this and share it, right? That's part of why you're here.
Yes.
And I want to talk a little bit more about that. I also want to remind everyone, I mentioned earlier the hashtag Ask10KSA. If you haven't submitted questions, you can start to do that, because in a few minutes we're gonna be tuning to your questions on Twitter. So use that hashtag Ask10KSA. So 10,000 women together in the fall,
Yes.
right? In Saudi, there has not been a meeting ever of 10,000 women together in Saudi.
No.
And how many men will be part of this gathering?
0.
0.
Yes, so if you can try to imagine the logistics of this from a security point of view, from a staffing point of view, from a volunteer's point of view, we're going to be working with universities and schools for our volunteers. We've been planning this, by the way, for about a year now, and I'm working with a wonderful team called Wondrous, and they're from Los Angeles, who've really been helping me curate and create this event. But we can't do this overnight. Our last ribbon, we planned it in 6 months, and I thought I was going to lose my mind by the time the event actually happened. And we started early so we could make sure that our message is actually not exclusively breast cancer. Our message is actually a circle of hope. And what we've done is invited other organizations that deal with the emotional, mental, physical, and environmental health to educate the women, because my thought was, if we have that many women coming at one location, to just tell one story would be a real shame.
So it's not a stunt, right?
No.
This is not just going to be a stunt. You're going to try to do something with these women when they're there.
So we want to give them the maximum exposure to health knowledge so that they can have self-knowledge and self-care as a mindset.
So what specific things are they going to...
So we're working with 3 hospitals where we're going to be doing genetic testing. They'll be taking the genetic sweep. They're going to be doing an infectious disease sweep, and they're going to be also doing a mental health survey. We're also working with a group of young ladies who are called the Empowerment Hub, who are going to be coming in, and once we form the ribbon and leave the floor of the stadium, they're going to be coming in and doing Zumba, spinning, a color run, and all sorts of fitness activities. We've got a bit of a carnival atmosphere going. We have a retail area where we're asking young fashion entrepreneurs to come in and display their products, and a percentage will go back to the foundation. And then we have the food entrepreneurs on the other side, plus the other organizations that are going to be educating women on health. And that goes from GE as a sponsor, who are going to be doing that kind of awareness, to also an organization called Qadirun that deals with individuals with physical handicaps. They're going to be coming in doing a sweep so that we can make sure it's a fully accessible event. We're working with an organization that's going to come in and take all the food after we're done, that's going to distribute it to charities. And we want to really promote the concept of leaving no trace behind, so a clean environment and recycling whatever trash comes out of this event. And we want to be a benchmark for how can we do an event like this, or any event, extremely well, where we have a lasting impact. It can't just be about breaking the record. That's the gimmick to get women there to be educated.
This costs a lot of money to do all this?
So the location
Not
we
to
have.
be crass,
No,
but
it's true. We have 2 locations that we're looking at, and both of them come at no cost because they would be given to us. And both of them are stadium-like locations, which brings our costs down. This is an event that's sponsored, but it's also an event that has the support of the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Social Affairs. So we have a lot of support, and we went and fundraised from local companies in the kingdom because I felt that they needed to be a part of this.
Are you anxious at all about sort of the more conservative parts of the community being upset about this, or what are the concerns about that?
So when we look at the reaction we got the first time, we were actually quite nervous about this being a women's event, and the sentiment at the time, this was 5 years ago, we only had 2 really uncomfortable phone calls of people that were really unhappy with the event that we were going to be putting on, and luckily for us, they left a voice note, so we just passed it on to the Ministry of Interior and said, you might want to look into this, and we kind of moved on. We, to date, have had no pushback, and everybody that we've presented it to, including the governor of Riyadh, the individuals we went to for sponsorship, we've only had a positive reaction. Am I ignorant enough to think that there will be people that are opposed to this? I'm not. In every community, I think you've got people that approve of things and disapprove of things, but if you actually stand still, you give them the power to push you down, but if you keep walking, they have to follow you. And I'd rather keep walking.
So there is another layer to what you're doing at the march, or at the gathering. The wear that the women are going to have, they're going to be designed in a particular way. This sort of gets back to your fashion and entrepreneurship.
So Guinness has certain standards that we have to follow, and one of them is the uniformity of what you wear. So other people have done one shade of a t-shirt or dressed all in one color. For us, if you noticed in our pink ribbon, we had the pink headscarf. So we are going to be doing a call out to young graphic designers to submit their designs, and 10 will win, to design the lower end of the scarf.
So as long as the top of the scarf is consistent?
And the reason for that is once you take the picture, they want one color. So, but how boring would it be to have one color? So we want to just kind of glam it up a bit, and also give a little bit of exposure to individuals that might not have been exposed before. And by exposure, I mean to their work.
So these will be 10 women designers who...
Men or women.
Men or women.
Yes.
So you're opening up...
I don't discriminate, yes.
All right.
No.
All right. How do you feel about seeing what kind of questions we're getting?
Let's do it.
Okay. All right. So this question is from Jeff Chan, who says, thank you for sharing your stories of courage and inspiration. What or who is your inspiration source and or guiding compass?
Okay. Not to be cliche, but definitely my parents. But taking a few steps farther, my grandmother, my mother's mother, was a woman that I have profound love and respect for, and she was really an advocate for education for women in the 1950s in Saudi. And she's the one that instilled in all of us the value of education and allowing access to opportunity. So I think it's not exclusively me, my whole family, all of my cousins follow in her footprints.
Now, you were educated
Washington, D.C.
in D.C., right? Your father was a diplomat in D.C., so that's where you learned to drive and all that?
Yep.
Right? Now, you have a daughter who is of driving age.
Yes, I do.
Is she... And she goes to school in Saudi,
yes.
right? Riyadh.
Yes.
Is she learning to drive? And how
She's going to learn this summer.
You want her to learn to drive?
I do. I think it's important. I think she needs to know how to get herself places.
But is she going to learn in Riyadh, or is she going to come?
She's going to learn in the States, in Los Angeles, when we're there over the summer. She's listening to this and is going to cringe right now, but she's learning to drive on a golf cart, and a marginal success. So, you know. Yeah, sorry.
Right.
You know.
Being parents, what can we do? All right, let's go to another question. This is from Stephanie Florence, and she asks, what is the best and most actionable piece of advice you've ever received?
Don't compare.
Don't compare?
Yeah. Because if you compare, you're actually going to find something that's going to make you miserable. You can be happy anywhere, you could be miserable anywhere. I lived in the States for 23 years. I've been back in Saudi for 9 years. It's two very different realities that I cannot compare, but I can live happily in both. So I would say don't compare.
So you don't have to cross over. Each can be their own.
Absolutely.
That's great. All right, let's see. This is from #charity.org. Was it challenging for male workers when you let women work in your department store? What was the behavior they had to change?
Oh my God, it was horrific.
It was horrific.
It really was, because they had just seen their co-workers leave jobs that they'd been in for a very long time, and our productivity and our morale completely dropped, and because they thought maybe they're next. And frankly, honestly, they really were next, because a year later, the next round of laws came about saying that more women had to come in even more specific areas. And the behavior that had to change was actually more on our part as an administration. You cannot give false promises, and you cannot ever guarantee something that is irrational and is not in your hands. So the challenge for us was, how do you make sure they feel respected and comfortable, but also safe enough in their job or their skill set that they would actually be able to leave and go elsewhere. The other thing that you've got to realize is the men that were working in our store weren't Saudi men. I had maybe 2 or 3 Saudi men. These were all men that came and left their countries to come and work for us. And a lot of them, Syrian background, Palestinian background, Jordanian, and other individuals had somewhere to go. Where am I going to send a gentleman whose family is living in Syria and it's war-torn, and I have to tell him, guess what, 6 months from now you've got no job? It was one of the most heart-wrenching, sickening moments I've ever had to go through. So then it was really working with other companies to say, I've got an individual with skill set 1, 2, 3, 4. Would you please hire this person? Does he fit into what you want to do? So it was a very, very, very big challenge.
Why so few Saudi men were working there?
In retail?
Yeah.
It's not a field that many Saudi men would aspire to.
It's not seen as prestigious for Saudi men?
No. No, it's not. But I'm very proud to say that we've gotten right now our floor manager for our top floor, 3rd floor, which is where the restaurant, Urban Contemporary, and our children's area is a young Saudi man called Tariq Al-Madi. And he started with us as a salesman and worked his way up. And he's been with the company about 7 years, and I'm profoundly proud of him.
You mentioned that to me that there's a new law that was passed in Saudi, as you said, feminizing the industry more. Can you,
Yes.
in the last few months, can you explain what that?
So 2 years ago, where it said that women have to work specifically in the cosmetics counters, they can't share a counter with a man, but if it was 2 separate counters, that was perfectly fine. The men could sell at perfumes, but couldn't sell in shoes, could sell at accessories, but not in evening wear, could sell in day wear, but then we had the issue of a long dress. Do you define that as evening, or is that day wear, and can the guy sell it, or can he not? Do I have to move it, but then I have to call the brand and say, I'm sorry, I have to move this dress to that corner because it's not fitting in your corner, because of the way I have to hire the men. So we'd wake up every morning going, okay, hang on a minute. Who goes where? You know, just so we can make sure that we're not violating any of the laws. And 2 other things that I also should really point out. Women were employed in retail in a ladies-only boutique. And the definition of ladies-only boutique would be no men are actually allowed in. And what that looked like was no visual sight from the outside looking in. So it was always closed. Not a really cheery place to work. And we are a department store, and the law that came in feminizing the workplace was for a mixed working environment, a public department store where men and women were both the consumers and the clientele. So when the law came out to feminize, many other department stores exclusively feminized. So they removed all of the men and brought just women in. But what I thought would be more interesting was to try to have a little bit of the social experiment and see if the law says men can work in X places and women can work in others. Wouldn't it be interesting to see if we can just all coexist? The law that changed now, and I fully understand why it changed, is that caused a lot of heartache for the women who constantly had to explain why they were working in a mixed environment. Their families weren't comfortable. So the law is changing now to create exclusively female staff in retail environments, even though they are public environments where the client is male and female. And that's to create this sense of comfort for the family, for the ladies. And I really honestly support any initiative that allows more women into the workplace, but I just future-wise think it's healthy to be able to engage and interact. But I understand that, and I don't view this as a step back. I see this as a way to get more women into the workplace and to feel more comfortable, and let's see what the future brings in terms of co-integration.
All right, let's see. Do we have more Twitter questions? I don't know. Let's see. So you said this quote to me when we were talking a little while ago, and it was, you said, my mandate is nothing radical. It's a butterfly effect. Mm-hmm. Now, it sounds a little radical, or it sounds sort of confrontational to the culture. Is it important that it not be, or do you not think of it that way?
I don't think of it that way because I'm not the only one operating in this space. And if it was just me, it would be such a lonely, lonely place to be. But there's such a momentum and dynamic environment of evolution and innovation and entrepreneurship and engagement that doesn't make a headline. What makes the headline here is something sensational, relating to women's driving, relating to the way we dress. It's never really what's happening on the ground, and there's so many groups that we work with and have worked with, whether it was at the store, from the arts that are flourishing, to music, to social enterprise and youth groups, that I'm one small character in a really, really big game. And it was a little bit shocking when we got the call from Fast Company saying most creative, and I was like, my God, how do I bring everyone with me? Because to do what I do in order to be the most creative person that you recognize, and I thank you for that, so many people were involved and so many other organizations, and we really kind of all did this together. And like I said, if it was just me, it might seem radical, but I'm one of many, many.
But there are things, because you're a princess, that allow you to give you opportunities that others don't.
Right. So which is really going back to why I founded the company. Alf Khair means 1,000 blessings, and I fully recognize that I am in a very privileged and blessed situation. So given that, I want to be able to create access to opportunity. And what does that mean? In my community, it means being the support to this creative community, and I don't mean arts and graphic designers and fashion designers. I mean individuals that are a little bit outside of the box in a business point of view that would like to be a little bit more entrepreneurial or a little bit more innovative than a structured day-to-day job. Mm-hmm. So what can I do, given the experience and access I have from working in retail, and create an environment where these individuals can also flourish and thrive? So on one end, it's creating the co-working spaces and providing the students that we're going to be training from the academy. And by the way, the academy's name is Alf Darb, which means 1,000 journeys or paths. So we're going to be able to take the girls that we're training and give them as a resource to the entrepreneurs that we're working with, and they will be already in that mindset, that innovative mindset that will allow them to be able to work really, really well within an entrepreneurial mindset. But within the entrepreneurs, what we're also going to offer them is the ability to have a financial view on what they're doing that's bigger than, I want to open a cupcake shop. Well, what's your supply chain? You can't go and buy Betty Crocker from the supermarket and make your cupcakes. Your store needs to look beautiful, but if you can't hire people and you don't have a projection on how you want to scale your business, you're going to shut down in about 3 weeks. If you can't manage your finances, if you can't do all of these things, as much money as someone throws at you as an entrepreneur, or as many business plans as they give you, if you don't have the technical capability to follow through on the proposition, you're going nowhere. And what we have right now and what we've had is so many funds that finance entrepreneurs, but nobody takes them to that next step. So we'd like to be the key that links people together and allow access to opportunity.
Well, I know you say that you don't compare, but I will say that it sure sounds like you're taking a lot of the things that you've learned in these different cultures and bringing them together to bring everyone else forward. And it's really great talking to you. We're just about out of time. I just want to remind everyone, if you can, 10KSA, go sign up, join up, share. The pink wings are outside. You can take a picture next to it. Thank you so much for your time.
Not at all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
A lot of people are very comfortable saying that machines can think. They can perform cognitive tasks. They can play chess. They can plan these elaborate plane routes and so forth. We're comfortable kind of using this word thinking with machines. But this emotive side, it's new, it's provocative, it's compelling, and it can also be controversial. So I thought I would spend some time